Hello, everyone. Once again, my name is Kelvin Mwoki. We are welcoming you to today's webinar. KESRA stands for Kenya School of Revenue Administration. It is the premier training school for Kenya Revenue Authority. And we are privileged and glad today to be having this moment to share with you all, our participants, on key issues pertaining the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. We expect to have a very invigorating, informing, intellectually challenging session, which is going to be moderated by the Commissioner, KESRA, Dr. Fred Mugambi, and our chief guest for today, Mr. Willie Shumba. KRA is a key player in the economy of our nation, and this discussion helps us see the opportunities that are available for our country and for our region. We also want to thank everyone who is joining us from afar. Welcome all of you aboard our KESRA Economic Dialogue series. With us today is our moderator and main host, Dr. Fred Mugambi, Commissioner, the Kenya School of Revenue Administration. So Commissioner, karibu sana. I want to hand over to you. We welcome everyone and wish us all a great time learning and engaging together. In terms of if you have any question for the panel to discuss, kindly make use of the chat area. It is on your bottom right side. We will pick your questions from there and the panel will be able to discuss them. Without further ado, over to you, Dr. Fred.
Thank you very much, Kevin. It is indeed my pleasure to be moderating today's session. This is the KESRA Economic Dialogues, and the KESRA Economic Dialogues is a series of dialogues that we hold from time to time, touching on various areas of our economy, not just in East Africa, but across Africa and the world generally. And so today we are discussing a very important topic, which is the role of the African Continental Free Trade Area in promoting Africa's competitiveness. We have a very senior panelist and someone who is very well informed, and I'm going to be introducing him shortly to all of us. But just before we go into that, I want to make a special mention of some of the guests that we have with us today. I am aware that people are still joining, but we have a number of guests who I would like to make special mention of. We have a number of Kenya Revenue Authority directors, Director Idao, Director Rosu Arohio, Director Paul Isharia, and then Director Miriam, and we have others who are going to be joining us. We have KRA commissioners with us. We have senior government officers from various ministries, treasury officials in Kenya's treasury. We have various managing directors and CEOs who are joining this webinar this afternoon. And for example, I can see we have the MD of the Kenya Dairy Board, the African Continental Free Trade Area Connect. We have the head of the Regional Intelligence Liaison Office, all the way from Zimbabwe here with us. And we have the Commission of Customs of Zambia. We have the Deputy Director, Trade Negotiations, from the South African Development Community here with us. And we have a number of organizations that are also represented by different people in this webinar. The Kenya Senate is represented. We have government ministries and agencies. We have the United Nations represented, the Law Society of Kenya, various county governments. We have various major regional players in the corporate sector, Safaricom, Centum, the AcFTA itself, Euro-Exim Bank, Deloitte, the Office of the Auditor General, the World Customs Organization, the Regional Intelligence Liaison Office, I mentioned that one, UNCTAD. We have various universities. We have the Dubai Chamber of Industry. We have Chemtrade, Kenya Bureau of Standards, Kenya Ports Authority, the Ministry of Finance of Rwanda, the Zambia Revenue Authority, and we have the Rwanda military also represented in this webinar. There are so many other organizations that I may not be able to mention by name. A number of countries represented. We have people from Zimbabwe, we have people from Zambia, we have people from Rwanda, we have people from South Africa, Botswana, Tanzania, and of course, Kenya. I can see people are still onboarding, and so as we move ahead, then we'll be able to recognize various other people. So like I mentioned, the KESRA Economic Dialogues is a set of dialogues that we conduct, and this is part of the value add that we do to all our stakeholders, both here and in the region. Just very quickly, it is important for me to tell our guests who exactly KESRA is. And so KESRA is the Kenya School of Revenue Administration and the training arm of the Kenya Revenue Authority. We are also one of the four, and actually the largest of the four regional training centers of the World Customs Organization in East and Southern Africa, with a reach of 24 countries. We also host the African Academy of the OECD in charge of financial crimes, tax and financial crimes investigations. And through that, then we serve the entire continent. We are also the regional training partner of the African Tax Administration Forum. And of course, our main mandate is to train various agencies, government agencies, and various government parastatals and the corporate sector as well in the areas of tax, customs, fiscal policy, and logistics. And so, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to introduce our main guest for the day, and then I will give a short background on what we want to do today. And therefore, today we are joined by Mr. Willie Shumba. And Mr. Willie Shumba is a senior customs expert and advisor based in Addis Ababa at the African Union Commission, but working with the AcFTA, the African Free Continental Area. And Mr. Willie Shumba has 3 master's degrees, LLM in International Trade Law from Nottingham Trent University, UK, a Master of Arts in Diplomacy from Leicester University in UK, and an MBA from the National University of Science and Technology, Zimbabwe. He is a member of the Zimbabwe Institute of Management. Mr. Shumba has been with the African Union Commission as a senior expert and advisor since the year 2016. His area of focus is in customs and trade facilitation under the African Continental Free Trade Area. And prior to joining the African Union Commission, he was head of customs at the South African Development Community Secretariat based in Gaborone, Botswana from 2009 to 2016. He has also served with the Zimbabwe Customs Administration and its successor Zimbabwe Revenue Authority and progressed through the levels from Customs Cadet to Commissioner. Amongst other areas, Mr. Shumba has wide experience in customs administration, international trade, corporate executive management. While with ZIMRA, that is the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, he represented Zimbabwe in trade negotiations under SADC, COMESA, and the Tripartite Free Trade Area, and also with the World Trade Organization. Mr. Shumba is also a lecturer in customs law at the National University of Science and Technology in Zimbabwe. And so Mr. Shumba comes to us with a lot of experience, with a lot of knowledge on the area of AcFTA. And just to give you a very quick background of what we are discussing today, we know that the AcFTA has, of course, been ratified by a number of countries right now, and it is already in effect starting this year. And it is said to be the largest free trade area by number of countries in the world. It is headquartered in Ghana, and of course, there is a lot of transition that is happening between Addis Ababa and Accra at this point. And the key thrusts of the AcFTA, of course, is, and this will be an important one that Mr. Shumba will be discussing, to remove tariffs from 90% of all the goods that we trade across borders, and to allow free access to commodities, goods, and services across the continent. These items have far-reaching implications on the kind of business we do as a revenue authority, but also on trade generally. It is instructive that most African, revenue administrations collect upwards of 30% of their revenue from customs. And so one of the things that Mr. Shumba will be looking at is then how do we trade off the removal of tariffs from 90% of the goods that we trade with the other requirement of raising revenue. The African Continental Free Trade Area is also expected to boost trade by 52%, intra-Africa trade by 2022. As we stand right now, of course, he'll be giving the numbers. The situation is dire and the numbers are pretty low. And so, ladies and gentlemen, without much ado, it is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Willie Shumba. And this is how we are going to run the session. He'll do a presentation for the first about 45 to 1 hour. And then after that, we're going to go into question and answer session. And you can post your question in the chat box, and we'll be able to pick it up and pass it to him or ask the question here directly. And so, welcome, Mr. Willie Shumba.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mugambi, for the introduction. And let me welcome the distinguished delegates who are attending this engagement. And I noticed from your introduction that it's a multi-stakeholder event, and it involves almost everyone across the board in Kenya, and also quite a number of other countries involved. I noticed with interest that we have got everyone from customs officers, tax administrators, politicians, business people, diplomats, lawyers, transporters, shipping agents, commissioners. And I want to assure you that what I'll manage to do is to give you insights into the African Continental Free Trade Area. Every now and then, I'll be referring to it as the AfCFTA. And I am sure, regardless of your background, you will manage to get something out of this presentation. And whatever you get should be able to incite your interest into the African Continental Free Trade Area, which offers opportunities for every African, the youth, the women, the conglomerates, the small to medium scale business people, the traders. Everyone has got a take on this African Continental Free Trade Area. As you can see from my slide, I'll cover the background of the AfCFTA. I'm sure the background will catch the interest of everyone, whether a person is a politician or whether a person is a customs officer or whether you are a small-scale trader. I'll touch briefly on the signature, ratification, and accession. I'm sure the lawyers would have some interest in that. I'll go into a bit more detail on the finalized protocols. We've got a protocol on trade in goods, what it involves, a protocol on trade in services. So whether you are trading in goods, whether you are trading in services, regardless of industry that you have an interest in, I'm sure you'll manage to get something for you to pursue your research on the AfCFTA further. Then I'll go on to the dispute settlement, how disputes will be resolved under the AfCFTA. I'll look at the opportunities, the threats, and the implications of the AfCFTA in the life of an African, in the life of governments, in the life of stakeholders and enforcers. And then I'll come up with a conclusion for this presentation. So I'm really looking forward to this engagement, and I think it's also a privilege on my part to have been given this opportunity to speak to this audience with a wide array of backgrounds. Now, coming on to my next slide. My next slide, it starts off showing the map of Africa. We can go into the map of Africa, and I have there indicated Kenya. I think is an appreciation of what the Kenya Revenue Authority and what KESRA have done to organize this. And as a result, my setting is to illustrate. You look at the position of Kenya there in East Africa, and if you look at it, you'll find it's well positioned with the key trading partners, either in the East, like India, China, or those in the north of Africa, and also the Middle East. And I also know through technology, through your transport sector, KQ, you have got access to the rest of the continent of Africa, be it to Southern Africa, to North Africa, to Central Africa, or to West Africa. So you can look at that as showing the opportunities and the advantage that Kenya has in the AfCFTA. And of course, I can also mention that you have one of the busiest ports, Mombasa, and looking at the profile of Kenya, just to show you that your country has got a very key role to play in the AfCFTA. A population of about 46 million, business-oriented population, very good business negotiators, skilled and educated populace. Your capital, Nairobi, modern and cosmopolitan. It can accommodate anyone. You enjoy being in Nairobi, seeing life in Nairobi. It will suit whether you are from the East, from the West, from the South, from the North. Nairobi is cosmopolitan to meet the needs of everyone. Your natural resources, your wildlife, I'm sure you'll lead in those areas. Your varied weather from the hot into the cool, moderate. Your tourist attractions that you have. Your services, the tourism sector, one of the key tourist attraction centers in Africa. Professional, educational, ICT, all those are services that Kenya is offering to Africa, not only to Africa, but to the rest of the world. Your agricultural products, tea, coffee, sugarcane, horticultural products, your industries, agricultural products, oil refining, cement, tourism, your exports, your import commodities. So you are well positioned in East Africa, yet you are well connected with the rest of the continent. That is Asia, Middle East, and even West Africa, etc. Then moving on to the next slide, after having a look at how Kenya is well positioned to take advantage of the African Continental Free Trade Area, I will start off by talking about what a free trade area is. We are talking about the African Continental Free Trade Area. Of course, it's an African and it's a continental free trade area. But like I say, I realize I'm talking to an audience with various backgrounds, and some of these issues, I can never take them for granted, some of these terms that I'm going to use. So I want to start off by underscoring what a free trade area is, so that we can all, from the same basis, kick off and discuss the opportunities that are there for Kenya in the African Continental Free Trade Area. maybe not only opportunities, but also certain elements of threats which might be there. Now, the World Trade Organization, which is the premier organization which sets rules for trade globally, it has defined a free trade area as a group of 2 or more customs territories. You can read that to mean countries, the customs territories. Although legally speaking, it's a bit deeper than that. But it's a group of 2 or more customs territories or countries in which the duties and other restrictive regulations of commerce are eliminated. So you are looking, when you talk of a free trade area, you are looking at a group of countries who agree to remove duties and the restrictive regulations of commerce on substantially all trade between the members. And a very key important is what I'm going to read in the last sentence, in products originating in such territories. And what that basically means is when you talk of a free trade area, you are talking of concessions between or among the member countries, but it is in products originating in such territories. So a free trade area is not meant for outside products to benefit, but is for products originating in the countries who form the free trade area. So when you look at the AfCFTA, you are basically looking at a continental free trade area in which goods originating in Africa will be traded in the continent free, and the restrictive regulations of commerce are eliminated. So it is very important that we note that it is in products originating in such territories. Then for those of you who may have an interest in the bit of the political history, the political economy of the AfCFTA, it is part of the treaty establishing the African Economic Community, a dream by heads of states, the Abuja Treaty, whereby the heads of states for the continent agreed that they needed to establish regional economic communities, strengthening the existing RECs in the 5 regions of Africa. And it had some stages. And the first stage was to establish the regional economic communities, your COMESA, your SADCs. Of course, you can also include the EAC, although the EAC has got a long history and was already there, and at some time it had become not fully operational. But the first stage in establishing the African Economic Community was to establish the RECs, to strengthen the RECs. And the second stage was preparatory work on trade liberalization with focus on trade barriers. The third stage was removal of tariff and non-tariff barriers. Then the next stage was the formation of a continental customs union, and then the establishment of an African common market. And finally, an establishment of an African economic community whereby the whole continent will be integrated in fiscal and monetary policies by 2028. So the AfCFTA is part of this process, part of these stages. And you are fully aware that already there are many regional economic communities in Africa, but the Africa Union recognizes 8 as building blocks for the establishment of the African Economic Community. There is CENSAD, which is mainly for the countries in the Sahara region. Then there is the Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, the Eastern African Community. I will not talk much about COMESA and EAC because I know Kenya is a very active member in those 2 organizations. Then you also have ECAS for the Central African states, and you have ECOWAS, which is also a very active, based in West Africa. And then there is IGAD, Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAT, and I know Kenya is a member of IGAT. Then there is a SADC for the Southern African states and the Arab Maghreb Union. So these are the 8 RECs which are recognized by the Africa Union as building blocks for the African Economic Community. But in addition to these 8, we are also aware that COMESA, the EAC, and SADC have also come up together with the tripartite free trade area as a sort of a stepping stone towards speeding up the process of the African continental free trade area. So for Kenya, I've just shown some of the regional economic communities that you are a member to. The EAC, IGAT, COMESA, I've talked about the tripartite FTA, and of course, you are a very key member, a very important member in the AfCFTA. So this is just a picture to show you that these are the organizations that Kenya belong to, and also to emphasize that there is complementarities amongst these. Remember, I said the 8 RECs are actually building blocks towards the African Economic Community, because a lot of people have said, how will AfCFTA exist along with the RECs? These are complementary. These are complementary institutes. These are complementary RECs, and in fact, that complementarity was even witnessed during the negotiations for the African Continental Free Trade Area. It was very easy to recognize and to build upon what the regional economic communities in Africa had achieved. And we can move on to the next slide. And basically, I've given you an overview, but a question which you may ask is, why the AfCFTA? The first point is, the AfCFTA is premised on trade amongst African countries, boosting intra-Africa trade. And it's again premised on the realization that trade is a powerful engine for economic growth and development. And studies have shown a relationship between trade and economic growth and development. And also a realization that Africa's role in global trade is very minimal. Africa as a continent, we only capture 3% of the global share of trade. And if we are saying there is a relationship between trade and development, it means that minimal share has got to be increased. So the AfCFTA is actually a tool to realize an increase in global share of trade. In addition, if you compare with other continents, intra-Africa trade amongst ourselves as Africans is just 15% of the total trade in Africa, compared to 19% in Latin America, compared to 51% in Asia, and 54% in North America, and 70% in Europe. So intra-Africa trade is very, again, minimal. So the low level of intra-Africa trade can change if Africa effectively addresses the supply side constraints. What goods are you going to trade in? And the weak productive capacities, the infrastructural bottlenecks, the trade information networks, the access to finance for traders and other economic operators, the issues pertaining to trade facilitation and the free movement of people. These are some of the issues that the AfCFTA will contribute towards achieving. And some of the objective is, the AfCFTA is a flagship project of the AU blueprint, that is Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, which emphasizes about economic growth for Africa, a place for everyone in Africa. And also it takes into account the needs of the gender aspects of issues, the youth, the small traders, the big traders, and it also takes into account boosting intra-Africa trade. So the AfCFTA seeks to combine the economies of 55 African countries under a pan-African free trade area comprising 1.35 billion in a market with a combined GDP of 3.4 trillion. Next slide. That occasion, I'm sure a lot of people in East Africa will remember that occasion. This was on the 21st of March, 2018, after the negotiations for the agreement itself had been finalized. And in the picture there, we find the then chair of the Africa Union, President Kagame of Rwanda, and we also see then President of Niger, President Issoufou Mahamadou, and the chairperson of the African Union Commission, that is the chief executive of the AUC, the African Union Commission, Mr. Mahamat, celebrating the finalization of the negotiations on the agreement. And that was a mammoth event which took place in Rwanda. And that was the occasion. That picture will show you the occasion. We can move on to the next slide. The next slide. Now, the negotiations for the AfCFTA were divided into three phases, or is divided into three phases. Phase one, which was concluded in March 2018, and which shows my previous slide of the celebration. Phase one involved the agreement itself, the overarching agreement itself. And this agreement was supported by three elements: trade in goods, dealing with the tariff offers and the rules of origin, the trade in services. I'll touch on the trade in services later. The dispute settlement mechanism. Again, I'll touch on that later. So phase one included those four elements: the agreement and the three protocols on trade in goods, trade in services, and dispute settlement. That was phase one. Phase two, which is currently ongoing, involves negotiations on issues pertaining to investment, competition policy, and intellectual property rights. And then there is going to be phase three, which will touch on issues pertaining to e-commerce, which is basically provisions on cooperation and the use of e-commerce in the continent. That diagram gives you an overview of the agreement establishing the AfCFTA. The agreement itself, there it shows 6 protocols: goods, services, dispute settlement, investment, intellectual property rights. And as I have said, investment, competition, intellectual property rights are still being negotiated. And also, as I said, there's going to be another additional one on e-commerce. We can move on to the next slide. Then in the next slide, we are going to look at the signature, ratification, and accession of the agreement. Like I said, this presentation has got a text for everyone. And I'm just showing you the ratification process. And here in particular, I'm looking at Kenya. An international agreement has got various stages, but I'll just touch on 3 of the stages. One of the stages is it is negotiated. The second stage is it is signed. And then there is also the ratification. And after the ratification, there is the implementation. Now for Kenya, still on the slide, still on the previous slide. For Kenya, the Minister of Foreign Affairs has a treaty section within the legal division that keeps records of bilateral and multilateral treaties involving Kenya. And as I said, one of the key elements is signature. And according to the Kenya Act of Parliament, a signature means an act whereby the state expresses its willingness to consent to the text of a treaty. And of course, Kenya signed the agreement in March 2018, the day when the heads of states were celebrating the finalization of the agreement. And then if we look at Article 2.6, the Kenya Constitution has got a provision that a treaty, once ratified, it becomes part of the law under the Constitution. And Article 7 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act provides the procedures which must be followed in ratifying an international agreement in Kenya. It involves the executive initiating the process. It involves engagement with the stakeholders. And once everything is done, the treaty is submitted to Parliament for consideration. What I need to mention is Kenya has already gone through that process, the process of signature and the process of ratification. So Kenya has ratified the African Continental Free Trade Area. And the ratification has got implications, as we will see when we move to the next slide. When we move to the next slide now, you find that signature, as on 1st April 2021, all member states of the AU except Eritrea had signed. And as I have said, ratification reflects a consent by the principles of the agreement. This is signature. Then Kenya has already taken the step of ratification, a step which is a step by a state towards making a treaty enforceable at the national level. And currently there are 36 ratifications which have been done for the AfCFTA. And you will find Kenya is there listed. And ratification shows commitment that one is going to implement. And those who ratified the AfCFTA agreement, they become state parties. The AfCFTA agreement is for African Union member states. But once you ratify, you become a state party because it shows a commitment to implement the AfCFTA. Let's go on to the next slide. You will find a very interesting picture. That is on the 10th of May, 2018, when Ghana and Kenya submitted their instruments of ratification to the African Union. In other words, they brought evidence that they have ratified, they had undergone an internal process to ratify, to implement the agreement. On that picture, let me explain a bit. What is of interest to you, Kenya, is Kenya was one of the first countries. In fact, I don't know whether to say the first country, because what happened is Kenya and Ghana submitted their instruments of ratification at the same time. So there is no number one and the number two there. They were all number ones. And what is important, since I am addressing Kenya, is, well, since the address is organized from Kenya, is to say, after the signing, your country, Kenya, was the first to ratify together with Ghana. And on that picture, you will find the chief executive of the African Union Commission. He decided to hold the instruments of ratifications together at the same time, so that there is no number one or number two. Because if he had taken the one for Ghana first and then the second one for Kenya, there was going to be a number one or a number two. So he decided to show the instruments of ratification to the world at the same time. And you will find in yellow, that was Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Kenya to Ethiopia, and who is also the permanent representative to the African Union. And the other side, you will find Ghana as well. The ambassador to Ghana, the ambassador of Ghana to Ethiopia and the AU. So that was a celebration. So you can see the important role that your country, together with Ghana, were the first number one to submit. After signing the agreement in March, within 2 months, you were showing the rest of Africa and the rest of the world that you are committed to implement the AfCFTA. You ratified and you submitted your instruments of ratification to the Africa Union Commission. And what does it mean, ratification? I have another further slide to explain what this process means when you brought this. It brings with it an obligation. Ratification is an undertaking to implement and not to undermine the implementation of an international agreement. So this is an undertaking that your country took. It's an undertaking to align national laws to the agreement, right? Because an ordinary customs officer based in Mombasa, he can only implement the agreement if national laws have been aligned to the agreement. You would not expect an ordinary customs officer based in Mombasa to be referring to the agreement whenever he wants to implement anything. Rather, he refers to his national laws. So there is a need for your national laws to be aligned to the agreement so that your stakeholders, be it customs officials, be it ministries of agriculture, be it your standards people, be it your SPS authorities, be it the Ministry for Trade, whoever, they work on laws, they work on national laws. So these must be aligned to the agreement. And this is an undertaking that Kenya took. And it's also an undertaking that all national laws within a state are going to be in harmony and further the implementation of the agreement without any conflicts. You have got so many laws which deal with the AfCFTA. Your tariff schedules, your rates of duty, probably under the auspices of the Kenya Revenue Authority and the Ministry of Finance. Your rules of origin, probably under the ministry responsible for trade. Your health standards may be under the Ministry of Health or under the Ministry of Agriculture. All your national laws, apart from being aligned to the agreement, they must be in harmony. And this is what ratification involves. Your procedures and your systems, if you are computerized, whether you are not computerized, but the mere procedures must also be speaking to one another and aligned to the agreement. So this is an undertaking that Kenya took to the rest of the world and Africa, that they were going to align all these by ratifying. And of course, it is up to the Kenyan community to follow it up with the relevant ministries and ensure that as we are now in a phase of trading, this has already been done. It's also an undertaking that you are going to prepare staff and internal mechanism to implement the agreement. Right, we move on to the next slide, which are highlights. Remember, I talked about the protocol on trade in goods, services, and dispute settlement. These are some of the components of the agreement. And I'll just give you highlights so that I can incite your interest and you can pursue these issues further. I talked about the protocol on trade in goods. If you go to the protocol on trade in goods, it has got its objectives. There are quite a number of objectives, starting from, if you look at paragraph 2, starting from A to F. But I'll highlight a few. Under the protocol on trade in goods, it says there shall be progressive elimination of tariffs. So where you are charging 25% duty under your EAC CET, according to the protocol on trade in goods, there shall be progressive elimination of tariffs over a period. There shall be progressive elimination of non-tariff barriers. For the customs officer, maybe because of my background as a customs officer, I have highlighted C, which is an undertaking. The objective is enhanced efficiency of customs procedures, trade facilitation, and transit. Efficiency in those areas. Then D, cooperation in TBT and SPS issues. The E, your promotion of regional and value chains and socioeconomic development, diversification, and industrialization across Africa. So that list shows you the objectives of the protocol on trade in goods. And to bring that into effect, there are also the details. You'll find them in other supporting instruments which are there, like your annexes. Now, I have talked about tariff liberalization. It's one of the objectives. The modalities under the African Continental Free Trade Area is to make sure that 90%, a country shall identify 90% of its tariff lines and identify them so that they are duty-free. So there must be tariff liberalization. We can go on to the next slide. Next slide. When we talk of tariff liberalization, we are talking of 90% of the tariff lines being free, duty-free. Now, when we talk of tariff lines, I think the customs officers and the trade experts will appreciate more maybe this diagram. When we talk of tariff lines, we are basing it on the World Customs Organization harmonized system. And currently the system in place is HS 2017, which has got 21 sections, 96 chapters. It has got 5387 subheadings, meaning under the WCO, there are 5,387 tariff lines. All commodities that are traded on globally are subdivided into 5,387 subheadings from the global point of view. But a country is free to subdivide the 5,387 subheadings into further smaller units. We can go on to the next slide. I will not dwell much on this. Now, when we come to the EAC tariff structure, your EAC tariff structure, which is based on the World Customs Organization HS 2017, you have a total of 5,688 tariff lines, meaning your commodities that you trade with the rest of the world are subdivided into 5,688 codes. And of these codes, you find that 2,128 are at 0%, 1,159 are at 10%, 2,335 are at 25%. And your EAC tariff structure has come up with sensitive items, which have got tariff rates either above 25% or which are combination. And these are 66 tariff lines, making a total of 5,688 tariff lines. What it means is, as a member, as a state party within the AfCFTA, Kenya is supposed to liberalize 5,120 tariff lines to duty-free, to 0% within a period of 10 years. Within a period of 10 years, 5,120 tariff lines must be duty-free. You already have 2,128, which are free. You have got others which are at 10%. So it's up to Kenya to choose out of the 10%, which ones are they going to liberalize to 0. You have got 25, we have got 2,335 at 25%. So again, it's up to Kenya to decide which ones are going to be at 0%. And those with mixed is 25 with duties above 25% or a combination rate is 66. It's up to a country now to decide. Obviously, you consider various factors like sensitive products, protection of your local industry, but at the end of it all, 90% of your tariff lines must be traded with the continent at 0%. You've got a 10% leeway that you can keep for some time. If you have got an industry that you want to protect, if you've got an industry that is giving you so much revenue and you want to protect it for a bit, you have got 10% that you can keep. So this illustrates the issue of the tariff lines. And when it comes to this tariff structure, it's an issue which involves everyone. It's an issue which involves your Minister of Finance, who are so much interested in revenue. It's an issue which involves your Minister responsible for foreign trade, which is responsible for identifying what products they want to protect the country. It also involves being a member of the EAC. You are operating on a common external tariff, and whatever tariffs you decide to reduce, it has got to be negotiated and agreed upon with your other partner states. So there are a lot of parties involved. But at the end of the day, what is expected for Kenya and what is expected for Kenya with your other partners is 90% of your tariff lines must be duty-free. So when I talk of tariff offers, I'm actually talking of the 90% which have been identified as duty-free. We move on to the next slide. Now, we've got some countries who have already done their tariff offers. 41 countries from CIMAC, EAC, ECOWAS, SACU, they've submitted their tariff offers, and the African Continental Free Trade Area is in the process of checking on the tariff offers and also attending to any issues that might need to be attended to. And you'll find that I have highlighted in red the partner states of the EAC, that is Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, South Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda. Those ones have already, there is actually work still going on, although they have been submitted. And of these 41 countries who are listed there, 36 have ratified. I've already discussed about the 36 who have ratified. So what it means is we've got some countries who have not yet ratified, who have already submitted their tariff offers. Just as an example, for the EAC, you have Tanzania. It has not yet ratified, but it is submitted as part of the EAC. South Sudan has not yet ratified, but as part of the EAC, they've already submitted. So these are just examples to illustrate the point. We now move on to the next slide. So this is a highlight about the tariff offers. Remember the definition of a free trade area. Duty shall be free, and it is on goods originating within the members. And I'm now coming on to the rules of origin, because the goods must originate within the members, the state parties. And when you talk of the rules of origin, it means there are rules identifying what do you mean by originating products. There are rules. The 55 members of the Africa Union have come up with rules of what they mean by originating products. And the overall objectives of these rules are based on the principles of deepening integration in Africa, boosting intra-Africa trade, promoting regional and continental value chains, and promoting industrialization. In other words, these rules of origin, they will not support someone who imports products from outside the continent. And say someone imports rice from India or Pakistan, and he merely repacks the rice into a bag written Kenya. According to the current rules, repacking of products will not make those products qualify as originating in Kenya. Someone imports milk from Europe in bulk in a tanker, and you merely put them into plastic bags. those products will not qualify as originating. Originating is based on the principle of deepening market integration, boosting intra-Africa trade, promoting regional and continental value chains, and promoting industrialization. I'll illustrate this more on this slide, whereby goods are considered as originating if they've been wholly obtained or produced in a member as defined. For example, your minerals, they have undergone substantial transformation. And as I have said, packaging, mixing is not substantial transformation. We move on to the next slide. Next slide. I'll give you an example of rules of origin. For example, for refrigerators, because some people are now asking, but Kenya belongs to COMESA. Why do we need the rules of origin in COMESA? Or if one wants to export, do you use the COMESA rules of origin or do you use the AfCFTA rules of origin? These rules of origin are different. Under the COMESA regime, the rules of origin are different from what the AfCFTA is all about. So if you, a country like Kenya, is trading under COMESA, you have to assess. If you are, say, a country like Kenya is trading with Zimbabwe, it now means you have to assess what rules are you going to use. Are you going to trade under the COMESA regime, or are you going to trade under the AfCFTA regime? If you want to benefit from trade, you can use that which is more beneficial to you. If you look at refrigerators, for example, the COMESA rules for refrigerators, it talks of goods will originate as COMESA if they are manufactured in which the value added is at least 25% of the factory, ex-factory cost of the finished product. So COMESA is talking of 25%. Of course, I know under SADC, Kenya will not trade under SADC, but I'm just showing you that as to illustrate a point. SADC rules will say manufacture in which the value of all non-originating materials used does not exceed 50% of ex-works price. And the AfCFTA talks of value of non-originating material does not exceed 60% of the ex-work price of the product. Now, if you look at those two, maybe just back to that slide. Just back to that slide. If you look at that, you will find that under COMESA, refrigerators, all you do is you want 25%. Whereas under AfCFTA, you need 65. You need 60%. I'll not go into the little non-gritties about non-originating value, non-originating material. But you can see that the content under COMESA, assuming everything is equal, is less under the AfCFTA. So if you are talking of a content of 40%, you may find that if you want to deal with Zimbabwe as Kenya, it might be better for you. You might want to use COMESA rules instead of using the AfCFTA rules. So these are some of the dynamics that a manufacturer in a particular sector would have to assess and see what is best suited for him. And again, this is an area where your customs officials can actually assist you with the calculations for you to determine what could be best for your particular industry. Your customs officials and those responsible for trade. I'll go on to the next slide, which shows maybe an example very familiar to Kenya. The rules when you decide to trade under tea and coffee, which fall under the WCO code is 0902, 4 digits. Under COMESA, if you are to trade in tea and coffee, COMESA requires 35% value addition, or a CIF value of non-originating materials does not exceed 60%. And if you go to the AfCFTA, it talks of manufacturing in which all materials of this chapter used must be wholly obtained. So that explains that the rules of origin under the AfCFTA are not necessarily a copy and paste of the rules of origin which are currently existing in the existing regs. So my apologies for those, it might be a lot of jargon here, but I'm sure those who are in the manufacturing industry, your customs officials, and your trade law experts and negotiators fully appreciate this. This is why I said my presentation is multi-stakeholders. Certain areas of the presentation might be targeted at a particular target group. Now, these are the rules of origin. Now, the negotiations on the rules of origin are still ongoing. The outstanding issues are regulations on special economic zones, issues pertaining to fisheries, the edible oils, sugar, leather, textiles, and apparel, the manual or guide on rules which will guide customs officials, manufacturers, stakeholders on what qualifies. And so there is still ongoing work for rules of origin. There is still work which is ongoing. But what is important is to note that at the moment, those who are ready to trade can proceed on the basis of the rules which have been finalized. So this is a specialist area, and separate presentations specifically dealing with the rules of origin can be done. But I just thought I needed to give you an insight of some of the issues involved with rules of origin. The next slide, trade in services. Again, in my opening remarks, I did mention that Kenya is very good at services. I did mention your tourist industry, your professional services, medical doctors, lawyers, engineers, ICT, etc., financial services. You are a hub beyond just the EAC, but also attracting lots of financial service providers in your country. And so under the AfCFTA, because services sector is a very wide sector, the AfCFTA have identified 5 priority areas which must be given attention for trade in services. There is the professional services, your professionals. So under these priority services, these are the sectors which are going to be given attention, and negotiations are ongoing and offers are ongoing. For example, under professional services, a country might say they want to liberalize in the medical sector, in the pharmaceutical sector, etc., the ICT, financial services, tourism services, the transport services. So those are the priority areas whereby there is offers. Then I also mentioned that I am going to discuss the issue about settlement of disputes. Now, this is a very important area. And of course, for Kenya, I am aware that you are a member of the EAC, you are a member of the of COMESA, and you have experienced cases whereby there will be disputes in trade. And the AfCFTA also have a protocol on rules and procedures on how to settle disputes. And what I need to mention is the dispute settlement mechanism for the AfCFTA is along the lines of the WTO. There's a lot of best practices which have been taken from the WTO. And the AfCFTA dispute settlement mechanism is bound by rules in order to ensure that trade is conducted under transparent rules. It is a settlement mechanism which was negotiated by the member states. And of course, Kenya was a very active member. And the system provides as provisions for consultations and mediations. Whenever a dispute arises, there is a provision for consultation and mediations. And it can be initiated through any of the trading party, and an investigation will be done, and a final report is presented to state parties for consideration. And I need to emphasize that the dispute settlement mechanism under the AfCFTA is more rigid and is more firm and stronger than what is provided under the regs, under the existing regs. So it's no longer a question of a member unilaterally introducing NTBs or introducing tariff measures, because the system is more rigid and it makes state parties accountable for their actions. Next slide. I'm coming on to the opportunities and implications under the AfCFTA. Again, this is a very cross-cutting. For general information, the AfCFTA focuses on the continent and is a stage towards the establishment of the African Economic Community. And it offers the government of Kenya has offered a facility to the people of Kenya under the AfCFTA, and is now up to the people to take advantage of the AfCFTA. The 55 heads of states have laid before the people of Africa, through the agreement, an opportunity for those who want to do business with the continent to take advantage of that. So what I am saying is, implementation now is in the hands of the traders. It's not like, it's not, because some people have said, what are the governments doing? The governments have already set aside something for you. And it's now up to the traders, the youth, the women, the small to medium traders to take advantage of the AfCFTA and start trading. There is a mechanism on how to deal with NTBs, and the issues of documentation has been resolved, and issues of capacity building, public awareness at national, regional, continental level. I'm sure for Kenya, this is part of the public awareness, but even at national level, because within Kenya itself, you have got a representative ministry responsible for foreign trade. And again, there was an undertaking by heads of states that each country will do in public awareness activities so that the people are aware of this facility, which has been opened, which has been made available to the population. Next slide. Next slide. It offers an opportunity for value chains. In other words, a country like Kenya partnering with other countries in making sure that goods originate in on the continent. So you can build upon your competitiveness by working in conjunction, collaborating with other countries, so that you come up with regional and continental value chains in order to have a made in Africa product, a product which qualifies in Africa. So instead of you increasing the value of non-originating material by ordering the non-originating material from other countries, if you order that material which does not originate in Kenya, if you order it from the rest of Africa, it doesn't then become a non-originating material, it becomes an originating material. So it offers opportunities for value chain. Now, Kenya has a reputation for producing original and organic products. You already have an advantage. And these value chains can be utilized to have Kenya local content into markets that you do not have access to. It also offers an opportunity for industrialization. Next slide. We move on to the next slide. I'm just trying to highlight some of the issues which are there. It's now an opportunity for Kenya to do your market intelligence, because you are already a member of COMESA, you are a member of the EAC. But under the AfCFTA, over 25 more countries are being brought in so that you trade with them. So instead of looking at your partner states, your Tanzania, Uganda, your partner states, instead of looking at your COMESA member states, the Egypt, Zimbabwe, Zambia, you can now start looking further than that. You can now start looking at some of the countries that you have not been trading with. Countries such as Chad, Mali, Sierra Leone. If you are into the business of producing towels and you have been struggling to find a market under the COMESA, the EAC, the market has been made wider for you. So you need to do your SWOT analysis. I'm glad to mention that the Africa Union and the AfCFTA has come up with an African Trade Observatory, whereby it has done some preliminary market intelligence, telling you who wants what. And you can visit that on that website. So you now need to work with your national institutions, which promote exports. Your export promotion and development. In respect of your imports, you now need to know the tariff offers which have been done by other countries. If you are going to trade with the Sierra Leone, for example, what you need to find out is, under their 90% of what they have offered is entering duty-free, what are the products under that 90%? So that a trader based in Kenya would know that if he's exporting to Mauritania, if you are exporting to Tunisia, if you are exporting to Cote d'Ivoire, what products can enter that market duty-free? Because those countries have identified the 90%, which they are going to admit free. Next slide. Now, I have mentioned that there is a summit decision by heads of state whereby countries made an undertaking to do public awareness. And further to that, countries have come up with national strategies. And what I can only say here is Kenya has done, they've taken care of that, and what you need is to participate in the national implementation committees, the national implementation strategy, and in the various processes that are taking at national level. Next slide. The next slide. Coming on to opportunities and threats, I could have just dwelt on opportunities, but I thought, to be fair, let me also talk about threats. When it comes to the AfCFTA, it really depends whether you decide to see opportunities or whether you decide to see threats. But anyone in business will need to have a proper assessment of the opportunities and threats so that you properly position yourself to take advantage of the AfCFTA. The first opportunity for Kenya is you are now looking at an open market of 1.35 billion. No longer are you restricted to your EAC partner states, to your COMESA member states. You can now go beyond and look at 1.35 billion, a market of 1.35 billion in Africa. Even if you are interested in investment, the opportunities are now there. Our politicians have made available the opportunities for investment, for industrialization, and for value chains. These are the facilities which our politicians have laid in front of Kenya. and in front of the continent. Another major opportunity is the AfCFTA requires implementation of trade facilitation measures. So, in addition to the trade facilitation agreement under the WTO, trade facilitation measures that you have been implementing under the EAC, what it means is the rest of the continent have got to implement trade facilitation measures. And what it means is if your goods have been struggling to enter into other parts of Africa, those countries, those other African countries will be obliged to open up the market and facilitate trade. And of course, you can now cooperate. Maybe just before you come there, you can see I'm coming to the end of my presentation. Those are the opportunities. Coming on to threats. You know, some people see threats. Someone has said if you give someone half a cup, another person will say it's half full. Those who look in terms of it being full. Another one will say it's half empty. Those will look at it in the sense that it's not full. So if you look at it from the side of threats, competition will be open. There will be more competition for your products. And an ordinary consumer will go for quality. So your products will be competing with the rest of Africa. If you had a market specially reserved for you, someone in West Africa, it means you can now compete with someone. Similarly, if you've got a market, if you've been producing your own products in Kenya and you have been supplying to your people in Kenya, what it means is under the AfCFTA, anyone else can bring another product to compete with your product. And again, I said it's a rule-based trading regime where countries will be accountable to one another for actions taken by their industry or by their government. So there is accountability through the dispute settlement mechanism where you are supposed to adhere to the AfCFTA agreement. I think, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to me. I'm coming on to the conclusion of my presentation. I think I've got 3 slides under the conclusion. And under the conclusion, I have issues of customs cooperation. I think for the customs officers who are here, some of the major issues are your trade facilitation, your border management issues, which now need to be aligned with the rest of the continent. The next slide. The next slide, the implication for strategic partners. As I say, I'm concluding. There are revenue implications. I know the ministries of finance and treasury and budget people are normally interested in revenue implications. Studies so far which have been conducted have shown that there is a minimal implication to revenue. Of course, your customs duties will go down. If you have been relying purely on customs duties will go down. But also look at it from this point of view. There will be an increase in economic activity in a country. And that increase in economic activity, it means more VAT, more income tax, more company tax. So a tax head on customs duty might go down. But there are implications, right? Some of the implications is cooperation and coordination. During the introduction, Dr. Mugambi mentioned that there were security people here. So there's now need for coordination and cooperation with the National Security Organization, the police, defense, state security in implementing the AfCFTA. And for customs and the revenue authority, those are key strategic partners that they need to deal with. Your manufacturers, your transporters, your clearing and shipping agents. These are key people, the clearing and shipping agents, because they are the people who do the running around with the documentation, bringing to customs. They represent, they are the in-between, between customs and traders. Your consultancy firms, you have got tax implications, your customs to customs, customs to business. customs to other agents, and then the national implementation committees. This slide, I must admit, when I did it, I was looking at customs mainly in mind, so that customs can have a clear picture of some of the stakeholders that they need to liaise with in implementing the AfCFTA. Next slide. Some of the key issues, again, I've emphasized, government has negotiated an international agreement with opportunities. You need to consider what's the niche for Kenya? What are the opportunities? What are the capacity building and public awareness activities? Your national strategies in order for you to enter the African market, not only the African market, but you use the African market even as a stepping stone to enter the global market. I've talked about some of the areas that is work in progress, like the rules of origin. But I need to mention that implementation of the AfCFTA started on 1st January, but there are still some other issues which is work in progress. Your trade facilitation issues, your payment systems, your insurance systems. Next slide. Next slide. Which actually brings this presentation to an end. I hope I have managed to give the audience an overview of what the AfCFTA is all about. But what I need to emphasize is Kenya has been a very strong participant in the negotiations, and they are a very strong member of the AfCFTA when it comes to the AfCFTA. And I need to assure you, I know your chief negotiator and the various negotiators who have worked on these various instruments, and all the knowledge that you may need to know and some of the questions that you may have, the Kenya government has got expertise on the ground. And I hope for customs preparatory work, because you are a key link. Politicians have negotiated, and customs administrations are supposed to be seen to be implementing what has been agreed by the rest of the continent. Thank you very much for the opportunity. It has been a pleasure to share with you what I have. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Willie Shumba, for this very, very, very informative presentation. There are so many questions. I don't even know how we are going to answer all these questions. And so I'll request the team to remove the presentation from the screen so that then we are able to also bring to the screen a few other people who may be useful in terms of contributing here. And so, Kevin, please remove the presentation from the screen. And so, Willie, there are a number of questions, and I don't know how you prefer to take them. I'm just going to read out a few, okay. maybe 5 to begin with. Then you can write them down, and then you can answer them.
Okay,
the
that's
first
fine.
One, can I go with 5?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good.
That's fine.
Great. All right. So the first one is, has the ACFTA analyzed the quantum of revenue loss that is likely to occasion to countries in terms of custom duties as we move towards the zero rating of the 90% of tariffs? And I think it would be important in case you have any figure for Kenya. The second one, is there a repository of the tariff lines that have been submitted for zero rating by different countries? And I think that's a question that has come up severally. Then the third one, the composition of product costs in different countries is different. How will countries that have higher cost composition for products cushion themselves against countries that, for example, pay low wages? That is in terms of when we open up the borders. The other one is, does the AcFTA cover free movement of labor? And when are we likely to see visa restrictions across the continent removed? Then let me just take two more. What will be the enforcement mechanism? And the last one, sorry, I said 5, but let me just give you this one, it's short. Now, you talked of a journey of 10 years so that zero rating of the 90% tariff lines will be done in 10 years. What are the milestones between now and 10 years? So I think you can answer those ones.
Okay. Thank you very much. The first question was on a revenue loss. Right. In looking at this, what I can tell you is the countries have done their own studies during the negotiations. This was part of the process during the negotiations. When they agreed on 90%, each country was taking its own situation into account when they came up with the 90%. So various countries have done their own studies. The Africa Union Commission, together with its partners like UNECA, have also assisted some countries to do the studies. But all in all, in general, what has been found is the effect on revenue is very minimal. Remember what I have said, that your customs duty as a tax head, your customs duty as a tax head might go down. But when you have an increase in economic activity in a country, it is also going to increase your other revenue heads, which are going to come as a result of activities such as investment, additional investment, and all the other factors which will come in. And again, the AfCFTA does not affect your excise duty because excise is a neutral tax which applies. Excise is a neutral tax which is not on imports, but more on internal economic activities. So countries have done their studies. And in addition to that, let me mention, remember I have said, we are starting at 90%. It's starting at 90%. Countries have been given the leeway to keep the other 10%. So if a country has identified that they are making revenue on a particular aspect and they want to maintain certain tariff lines for revenue purposes, that leeway is there within the 10%. It's not only for revenue purposes. It could be for purposes of employment. If you've got a sector that you think there is an infant industry that needs protection, if you are looking at labor and things like that, there is a 10% that you can keep on. But all I can say is these are issues which have been taken care of during the negotiations, and also these issues are also taken care of during the element of tariff offers that are being met. So a country, the EAC, for example, Kenya is part of the EAC. What it means is when you submit your tariff offers, actually tariff offers have been submitted. But like I said, there are some checks which are going on. So if any issues arise, these are the issues that a country will need to take into account. Of course, currently, these tariff offers, part of the process is they involve negotiations. The countries are negotiating. a country will say, okay, this is my 90% to country B. But because they are bilateral negotiations, what are you going to offer me? What am I going to offer you? So what it means is within a country, there will be, within a country, as trade starts, there is suppose a repository where a trader can check. And again, this is an issue that can actually be pursued with your local ministry responsible for trade. Then there was another issue that I assumed this issue was affects more on rules of origin, where you have another country with high labor cost, another country, the value of non-originating material being high. An instrument has been negotiated, the rules of origin instrument, and it defines the key issues. What do you mean by cost? What do you mean by CIF? What do you mean by value addition? What do you mean by non-originating material? So these terms are defined under the rules of origin, so that at least from a definition point of view, you are talking at the same level and you are using common terms. Of course, countries use different rates of exchange, but some of the basic principles which determine value issues, even on the issue of value, what do you mean by value? What do you mean by value for duty purposes? These issues have been defined in the agreement, and it's relevant protocol.
But Willie,
the other question was
Willie, yeah. Willie, just a question. There is the question on the tariff offers that are being negotiated. Mm-hmm. I think the question was, is there a repository where we are able to know what tariff offers have been submitted by Tanzania, by Kenya, by Uganda? Are we able to go in there and know that these are the tariff lines that have been submitted for zero rating, okay, or for conversation?
Yeah. Now, for Kenya, the countries that you have mentioned, are actually part of. They are actually part of the. You are sharing a common external tariff with them. What it means is the negotiations. What it means is the 6 partner states, because you are using the same CET. You can't say, Kenya can't say, I'm allowing this under 0, and another country says, I'm allowing this under 10%, because you are using the same CET. Goods coming from the EAC are charged using the same rate. So what it means is the partner states have to negotiate. In fact, I believe they have done so, or they're in the process of doing so, so that you come up with one CET. You come up with one CET where you are charging 25% and you identify a product and you come to 0, you have to agree as partner states. So for the EAC partner states, those will be your internal negotiations with other partner states, so that you come up with a common external tariff. Right. But then, say if you are talking of a country like Nigeria, and Nigeria is negotiating with Kenya. Again, for Nigeria, remember Nigeria is part of the ECOWAS. What it means is they will again be negotiating as a customs union, talking to another customs union. So what it means is the 2 CETs, it will be talking, for Nigeria, it will be talking with its ECOWAS. But let me give you an example like Zimbabwe, which doesn't belong to a customs union. What it means is, if Zimbabwe is negotiating with the EAC, right, Zimbabwe will identify its 90% tariff offer that it is prepared to open up for the EAC, and the EAC will identify its 90%. And once they have concluded, what it means is Zimbabwe has got to make public what it has concluded with another party, and the other party has got to make it public what it has concluded. But you will appreciate that during the period of negotiations, some of this information, people might not want to discuss what they are going to offer until they have concluded. So currently, there are engagements amongst various countries on what they are going to be offering one another. But it is a requirement under the WTO and under the AfCFTA trade facilitation instrument that information must be made public, so that you don't go to government to ask, but you know that the information is public. So that information will be made public, and I think the AfCFTA trade facilitation instruments even refer to making that information on a website. Now, AfCFTA, does it cover free movement of labor? Remember my first definition, one of my first slides, I defined what a free trade area is, and the AfCFTA is a free trade area. I defined it as free movement of goods and other restrictive measures of trade on substantially all trade and originating goods. That's a definition of an FTA. And currently, the AfCFTA is an FTA emphasizing on goods, services, free movement of those elements. Of course, it will cover other legs like investment, competition, intellectual property rights. But for now, we are talking of an FTA, free movement of goods and services. But as integration gets deeper, like the way the EAC has gone, from a customs union to a common market, as the integration gets deeper, then the other sectors will be opening up the free movement of goods, the free movement of people. But what I need to mention is under the Africa Union Commission, there are already negotiations under a separate leg on removal of visa restrictions and free movement of people. But again, I am emphasizing that for the AfTA, we need to understand that it's talking about goods, services, investment, competition policy, intellectual property rights. And remember, it's a building block towards an African economic community. And in that process, there is going to be free movement of people, factors of production, as we graduate beyond the AfCFTA. Then enforcement mechanism. Enforcement mechanism is there under the dispute settlement mechanism to ensure that there is compliance. What are the milestones between now in terms of tariff reductions? Is 90% for the EAC. I think they are reducing that 90% over 10 years, and it's going to be linear, meaning every year there will be reductions, and there will be a check and review mechanism to ensure that countries have reduced their tariffs according to what they've agreed upon. So there are milestones when it comes to reduction in tariffs. I think
Willie, on the question of enforcement, I think the question was, if countries do not adhere, if they do not reduce, then what mechanism does the ACFTA have to enforce, to ensure that they actually do, so that then we have a level playing ground? I think that was the question.
Okay, all right. And like I said, the system under the AfCFTA is more rule-based compared to what we have in the existing regs. And it's along the lines of the World Trade Organization. I have talked about the process. It involves mediation. Whenever there is a problem, there is a stage of mediation. And after mediation, there is a process of some investigations. And after that, there is a process of a report being brought before state parties on someone who would have become errant or not complying. And it's up to the state parties to decide what action to take on a country which is not complying. So there is a process, and there is everything will be decided by the state parties, those who have ratified and have decided to implement the AfCFTA. Thank you.
Okay. I think we have answered those. I don't know whether any of the people who have been pinned on the screen would want to say anything before I can take the next round of questions. I can see Acting Commissioner Customs, Pamela Ahago is here with us, and a few other people. So please feel free to intervene at any point. But let me ask one more question as we get to the team on the screen. There is a question here on small traders. And the question is the AcFTA really beneficial to small traders? And I think the thinking is that this thing is for the big boys and girls in trade. Then the other question is, what will be the relationship between the AcFTA and the operations within the RECs? And which one will, I think they meant, which one will be more important than the other one? Which rules will supersede the others between those of the RECs and the AcFTA? Then the other question is, does the AcFTA cover security operations? And I think the thinking here is security operations under the AUC Commission, where different countries come together to provide interventions in places like Somalia. Do you want to take those ones, Willie?
Okay, thank you. Small traders, what I can say is, it's not, the AfCFTA is not for the big boys and the big girls. In fact, what is happening, the real fact of what is happening in Africa is some of the products that you will see in the shelves in neighboring countries are probably not taken out by the big boys or the big girls. They are actually taken out by small traders. I will give you an example of a Zimbabwe product. Zimbabwe produces long life milk. You know, it is bottled and it doesn't need a refrigerator. I'm sure it happens in most other countries. Zimbabwe produces a special juice, a special orange juice called Mazoe. But if you go into neighboring countries for Zimbabwe, you will find these products in the shelves. And you will probably find that some of these products have been exported by the small traders. There is nothing to stop me. Let me say, I'm even smaller than a small trader. But being smaller than a small trader, there is nothing to stop me from coming to Kenya and deciding that I am going to export 500 kilos of Kenyan tea to Zimbabwe, right? As long as it is originating, if it means the rules of origin under the AfCFTA, and the company in Kenya might not even have identified a market in Zimbabwe. But if I have done my homework, there is nothing to stop me from coming to Kenya and I decide to export 500 kilos of Kenyan tea and I produce my documentation as they enter Zimbabwe, and if it is originating, it enters duty-free. So the small trader also benefits. The small trader also benefits. In fact, the reality of the situation is some of the products which the big boys who manufacture, some of them, they don't even advertise those products. They don't even know that their product is being sold 2,000 kilometers away. I'm aware of someone who went to another country and found that a product under his product line was being sold in another country. This is why I have said the AfCFTA is for everyone. The big girl, the big boy, the big man, the small man, whoever, anyone can take advantage. What is important is goods originating in Africa can be traded across the continent duty-free. So it is beneficial. But what I need to mention is there is still some work to be done to ensure that the regime for the small traders is fully operational. Another question was the relationship between AfCFTA and the REX. The AfCFTA is a trading regime for the continent. The REX, like for example, COMESA, in the case of Kenya, is a trading regime for your partners within COMESA. This is why I gave an example of the rules of origin. If I am manufacturing a vehicle in Kenya, I can now determine if I want to export a vehicle to Eswatini. I can determine if my vehicle qualifies under COMESA or under the AfCFTA. So these are trading regimes which will be running together. And it's entirely up to a manufacturer to identify which regime is better for him. I'll give you an example of the refrigerator. Under COMESA, the rules of origin for COMESA are very friendly when it comes to refrigerators, products such as cement. Because under COMESA, maybe it was a fewer country, but under the AfCFTA, you will find that there is a demand for more originating material. So all I'm simply saying is the AfCFTA is actually opening up a wider market, but the REX will continue to be there. The other issue was, does it cover security issues? Under the Africa Union Commission, there is a department which deals with security issues. The AfCFTA is more with market integration. Africa becoming a common market to supply goods and services using common investment rules, intellectual property rights, and competition being fair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I can see my friend, Commissioner Sydney from Zimbabwe. Commissioner Sydney, are you there?
Zimbabwe, Zambia.
Zambia, sorry. they all start with Z.
Willie, I'm being given another country now.
Okay.
And I received.
You can handle both.
I can.
Good to see you here.
Thank you for the excellent presentation. I've been following from the beginning of this forum, and there are a lot of useful things that you touched on in your presentation. But my cry, and this has been something that I've always touched upon every time I'm commenting on the CFTA and what it means to Africa. The need for us to strengthen the supply side. Without us strengthening the supply side, we will continue seeing the results that we have had all along as a continent, because we have been consuming what we don't produce. And therefore, in order to strengthen the value chains, to strengthen realization of benefits and higher incomes from trade, we also need to ensure that we have deliberate programs that speak to the supply side. So I'm just re-emphasizing what Willie touched on, and that is my prayer for Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Sydney. We look forward to coming back to Zambia when this madness of COVID is over.
Maybe
You're
just a
always
quick
welcome.
comment on maybe just a quick comment on what Sydney has said. Actually, this is one of the objectives of the AfCFTA. In my slide, I talked about the supply side, and I also talked about the value chains. I talked about industrialization to make sure that we trade in our own goods. And this is going to be one of the major tasks of customs officers, to make sure that we don't trade in foreign goods which don't qualify, because the rules of origin are supposed to support that bigger objective of ensuring that we are trading in our own goods, while our industry will take opportunities to make sure that they supply products. Then, of course, Sydney also made a joke about him being referred to as Zimbabwe. What I can mention is, you know, at one time, Zambia was northern Rhodesia and Zimbabwe was southern Rhodesia, and someone saw it fit that we needed to have one surname. It was the colonialist then. So, and we are just separated by a river. We both start with the letter Z, and the Zimbabwe and Zambia, they normally sit next to each other at all these international meetings. So there's a lot in common between the two, just like there's a lot in common with the rest of Africa being all Africans. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Willie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sydney, and good to have you here. I can see Acting Commissioner Pamela here. Pamela, maybe you can say something, and I can also see that our KRA Director, Honorable Rosu Arroyo, who also served in the East African Parliament as a question. So after Pamela makes a comment, then Kevin, please enable Director Rosu Arroyo to also be able to make a comment. Unfortunately, I'm told that it's only myself and Willie who can appear on this presentation by video.
Thank
Pamela,
you very much. Thank you very much, Commissioner. As customs, we have now African trade area already negotiated, and it is our work to ensure that we implement this trade policy. We have participated in the negotiations, especially on rules of origin, and our team is ready for the implementation. In fact, we are making preparations towards ensuring that we implement African Free Trade Area. We are already in the process of printing the certificates of origin that will be issued within the region. We clearly understand the content of the rules of origin and its implication in the regional and African trade. And we as customs, we have to ensure that we follow the rules of origin as indicated and as stated in the African Free Trade Area. And it will be our mandate to ensure that we do not allow third-party goods to be traded, but we'll be allowing the goods that confer origin in the region. So, Chair, we are ready, and we will ensure that all is done in line with the protocol. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Pamela. Much appreciated. Pamela has a long experience in customs. So she's one of the people who is really pushing this in our region. Then Director Honorable Rosu Arroyo, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Mugambi. I was sending you the note. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Now, mine was a very simple question, but before that, let me say this has been a great presentation. We want to thank our guest, and we hope this kind of dialogue continues. I was just looking for clarification. The speaker, Mr. Shumba, talked about tariff lines, and then he talked about 90% of these being duty-free. So is it the lines that you have to make up 90% of the lines to be duty-free? And how does that then, does that therefore give countries the freedom to choose the lines that remain in the 10%? Doesn't that interfere then with the value? I hope I'm clear.
Yeah.
Yes, you are, Director.
Thank you.
Willie, maybe you can respond to that straight away.
Yes, I can respond. Let me just start off by acknowledging what Pamela has said. I can confirm what she has said. The technical working group on rules of origin was for a long time ably chaired by Kenya, and they did the job very, very well. So Kenya has taken a very active role. And what I also need to mention before I get on to my second question is to encourage the two commissioners here present that there are certain elements on rules of origin, there are certain elements on trade facilitation issues which are still being negotiated and are yet to be finalized. And in respect of this, I would really urge the two commissioners to ensure that your administration is represented at a technical group, subcommittee level group to participate, so that customs as enforcers of this agreement, you are involved in the decision-making process. It's very important that customs take part. There are many subcommittees where customs will be required. There is a subcommittee on trade facilitation, customs cooperation and transit. There is a subcommittee on rules of origin. There is a subcommittee on NTBs. There is a subcommittee for DGs, and it's very DGs of customs. It's very important that as customs administrations, I'm happy that we've got the heads of customs here, we participate in these issues. Otherwise, some key decisions might be made without your presence there. Then coming on to the last question about the 90%. Yes, the 90% is an offer by a country. It's an offer. It's a voluntary offer, and the 10% is entirely up to a country to identify the 10% that it does not wish to offer for now. And so it is an offer. And remember, I've also said for a number of countries, they already have some 0%. And I said in the case of Kenya, you've got under 0%. I think you've got 2,100 and something, which are zero. And what it means is that already forms part of your 90%. And you have to identify the 10%, the 25%, and those sensitive products who are beyond 25%. But I can tell you that a lot of work in the case of Kenya and the other partner states has already been done. But as these engagements continue, you need to be aware that the 90% is there, and the 10% work will soon start on the remaining 10%. I'm sure member states will be advised when the remaining 10% will be given attention to. Thank you.
Question from Eugene and a few others is how will the AfCFTA operate given the other trading arrangements that we are signing with other countries outside the continent, like China? We have one that has just been signed between Kenya and the UK. And so how then will we ensure that the two run concurrently without these arrangements that we have outside the continent interfering with the intracontinental trade? Willie?
Okay, thank you. I hope there was a time when you were muted, but I got this question. Right. The AfCFTA is an agreement amongst African countries to trade duty-free in respect of goods originating in Africa. Now, if you start from that premise, there is nothing to stop a country like Kenya from entering into another agreement with China, as long as the terms of that agreement does not contradict or does not negatively impact trading amongst African countries in respect of goods originating in Africa. So it is quite possible, it is very possible for trading agreements to run concurrently. A number of countries are trading under, will be trading under the AfCFTA, yet they've got agreements under the EPAs. They've got agreements with India. It is possible, but the agreement itself says anyone who is to enter into an agreement with a third party outside the AfCFTA must assure the AfCFTA that the agreement that they are going to enter into does not contradict the AfCFTA. And again, this is another job for customs officials to ensure that goods coming from outside the continent don't find their way being traded in Africa as originating in Africa. So the rules of origin must be adhered to so that we don't end up with Africa trading in non-originating products. So you can see, I'm sure the rest of the audience can hear the importance of customs in implementing the AfCFTA. And one of the instruments under the AfCFTA is cooperation amongst customs administrations. There is a whole instrument whereby customs administrations must cooperate, must share information, must liaise, must assist each other in enforcing the agreement, because this is one of the very important ways in which the AfCFTA will be implemented. If customs administrations kept to Cairo, Djibouti to Sierra Leone, share information and discuss and talk. Thank you.
Just before I give the opportunity to our director, Paul Isharia, there is a question that I've just seen here that relates to what you have just mentioned. So will there be an electronic repository of the rules of origin that anyone can, make a quick reference to?
Yes, this is one of the works which is ongoing, because when it comes to rules of origin, you are looking at your stamp impression, who can sign, to ensure that you counter fraud. Right now, at the last meeting, which was held last week, there was a recommendation by the Subcommittee on Customs Cooperation and Trade Facilitation and Rules of Origin that member states, state parties must share the stamp impressions, they must share the signatories, they must share who are the competent authorities or designated authorities to share so that everyone knows in order to beat fraud. But with the going on of time, as the AfCFTA develops, I'm sure a time will come when such information will be shared electronically. Even the certificate of origin, there will be such a time when it will also be shared electronically. In fact, there are already talks which are starting up about the electronic certificate of origin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Director Paul Isharia. Director Paul Isharia is one of our directors at KRA. Director, please go ahead.
Thank you, Fred, and thank you, Willie. This is a very informative session, definitely very thought-provoking, and we look forward to walking the journey to full implementation. To one of the earlier comments that was made about boosting the supply side, can you tell us what policies have been built into this Continental Free Trade Agreement that will encourage increased productivity across all the member participants of this agreement?
Okay. Right. Thank you very much for that question, and also for bringing this issue up. As I said earlier on, the AfCFTA is not like something hanging up there on its own. It is a built up from regional economic community, and it's not competing with regional economic community. It is actually building up on the work which has been undertaken or which is ongoing under the regional economic community. If you look at regional economic communities such as COMESA, that the EAC, well, most countries in the EAC belong to, and which Kenya belong to, it has got industrialization and private sector development program with business forums, with also an emphasis on industrialization. If you look at, for example, SADC, they've got a SADC industrialization process. If you look at, I talked about the special economic zones where goods will also be produced. And the AU has developed a commodity strategy whereby the commodities in demand, and also how, building upon the industrialization strategy, the continent can spare itself into greater heights of industrial development. They have already identified, and there is work going on taking advantage of the pharmaceutical industry, mining beneficiation, agricultural production. There are already ongoing programs. There are already ongoing programs to ensure that the supply side of products is attended to. There is already work being undertaken by the ministries of industry, the ministries of commerce, the ministries responsible for private sector development, to ensure that the supply side is taken care of and Africa trades in its own goods. So all I can say is there are programs which are ongoing, which will cater for these various aspects of industrialization and the supply side. Another area which, of course, I've mentioned, but which I need to emphasize, is the value chains. It's one of the pillars that is being encouraged, the value chains, where Kenya, where they assemble or manufacture cars. If you have been importing your leather from outside the continent, you can build on value chains. You've got Ethiopia next to Kenya, a very strong leather industry for your car seats. You have got a country like Botswana, very strong in animal husbandry and the production of hides, and countries can actually work these value chains to make sure that goods made in Africa are produced for Africa and are traded for the continent. So there are parallel programs. There are programs which are already ongoing to cater for industrial development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Willie, for that. I will also ask Director Engineer Leonard Idhao to give a comment, but as Director gets ready, Willie, this question on free movement of people seems to keep coming back. I don't know, maybe you might want to say something about it. At what point are we going to see free movement of people? It keeps recurring. And as you answer that question, I want to also mention to the ladies and gentlemen who are tuned in that I can see there are a number of questions that are specifically directed to KRA. We are not going to pose those questions to our panelist because definitely he would not be able to answer those ones. And so we are going to take those ones and be able to handle them directly with the people who are asking those ones. So Willie, do you want to answer the question on movement of people as Director Leonard Idao prepares to make a comment?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Of course, I have emphasized that an FTA is goods and services. And it's already a fact realized and accepted by the AU that when you talk of movement of goods and services, some of these goods and services move with people. Just a simple example of a truck driver. A simple example of a truck driver. A truck driver moves goods, but he is a person and he needs to move. If you restrict his movement, then you are also creating an end-tariff barrier for the goods to move. But as I have emphasized, the current effort of the AfCFTA, the AfCFTA is in trade in goods. But within the Africa Union Agenda 2063, I could have referred to the year if I had the document with me. There is reference to the free movement of people. And you know, the free movement of people, it also involves, it goes beyond goods. It involves security organs. I know in East Africa, you are already there with a couple of countries allowing the free movement of people, but with other countries still working the dynamics to that. But with some other countries even going far beyond even talking of freedom of settlement. But there are timelines on the free movement of people. And I'm also aware that within those timelines of free movement of people, there is even a talk of maybe looking at free movement of business people as a low-hanging fruit. You know, there's free movement of people and there's a free movement of business people as a low-hanging fruit. So there are already timelines which are already there. But like I said, I don't have the timelines with me here now. But it's one of the agendas which is already there. But now that I am addressing a forum made up of people from various backgrounds, you know, the AfCFTA and the whole AU agenda is an agenda which is driven by countries, by the people who are listening. Meaning, as your politicians negotiate these various agreements, there is nothing really to stop this issue, the pressure on this issue, on free movement of people and business people, to even that pressure to come from the level of the people who are listening now. Right. But all I can say is this agenda is there as part of the AU agenda. And it's actually part of the African economic community, which is being designed. I think it's under stage 5 or stage 4 or 5 or 6 of the African economic community. One of them involves free movement of people in the Abuja Treaty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Willie. Meanwhile, please adjust your camera a bit so as we can see the whole of your face, Willie. Let me now ask Director Leonard, Engineer Leonard Idao, to ask his question. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been a very interesting conversation. We can go on and on and on and on. There is a curfew in Kenya, and people are supposed to leave their offices by 4 o'clock. And so you'll allow that Engineer Leonard Idao will be our last person to comment. And then after that, we're going to close, but we can see there are several questions. And after that, then I'll ask my colleague Haido to prepare to give a vote of thanks. Engineer Idao, please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Mugambi. I think this has been a very informative afternoon. Time very well spent. I'd really like to thank Willie for the thought-provoking and stimulating discussion on Africa free trade. Mine is just to comment that really the inflection point for Africa, individual African countries and Africa collectively, to grow its economies, to afford opportunity to its peoples, will only begin once we have increased intra-Africa trade. And it's very important that we begin that journey, no matter how difficult it will be, and I'm sure it will, because that is the end point that we have for our peoples, for our children, to have a future that is a future of opportunity, of growth, and of ease of communication and ease of doing business. So I'm really thankful to you, Dr. Mugambi, and the KESRA team for organizing this webinar this afternoon. And I thank all the other guests who joined us. We really appreciate your company and your viewpoints. And we look forward to having this debate continuing and let the discussion flow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Willie. The conversation has been very, very invigorating. You can be sure you've put us in a bit of trouble because we will be calling you back. And just going by the comments from our senior people, the directors and other people, I know what the conversation will be after that. Can we have a deeper conversation touching specifically on KRA, on some of these things? We had participants from Zimbabwe, Zambia, Rwanda, South Africa, Botswana, Kenya. We had various organizations represented. Again, I can mention just a few. The Kenyan Senate, government ministries and agencies, the UN, the Law Society of Kenya, county governments, the several county governments actually, Safaricom, Centum, the AcFTA itself, Euro Exim Bank, Deloitte, Office of the Auditor General, the World Customs Organization, RILO, which is an agency of WCO, UNCTAD, universities, various, actually more than 10 universities, the Dubai Chamber of Industry, KenTrade, Kenya Bureau of Standards, Kenya Ports Authority, Ministry of Finance of Rwanda, our own Treasury, Zambia Revenue Authority, Rwanda Military. These are some of the organizations that were represented in this conversation. And we are proud as KESRA to be, again, the regional training center of the World Customs Organization in East and Southern Africa. Of course, we have 3 other partners, that is Zambia, South Africa, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Mauritius. And we are proud to be in this group, the 4 of us, these institutions, to be able to reach out to the 24 countries of the East and Southern African region. And we will be reaching out to the various people whose questions have not been answered to try and be able to answer these questions. Now, there is a gracious lady called Haido Igo. Haido Igo has been working with the WCO, with the World Customs Organization. She has been an employee of the Kenya Revenue Authority for many years, and she was on secondment to the World Customs Organization. And she came back, and she's now working with us at KESRA. When she left, she was actually working at KESRA, and then she went to WCO, and she's now back at KESRA. And she, together with the rest of my team, I cannot mention all of them. There are so many, led by their chief manager, Eunice Njenga. Of course, we have Kelvin Mwaki and a host of many others behind the scenes. But Haido took the front seat in preparing this particular conversation. And so I'll have the honor to request Haido Igbo to give a vote of thanks. Haido?
Thank you, Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to wish you well, and I'm very happy that you had to create time of your own to attend this session. It has been really an informative one, and I am glad that you stayed put until past half hour from the time we had promised we will end. But first and foremost, I would thank our guest speaker, Mr. Willie Shumba. Thank you very much for that informative presentation, and truly it has really been very, very interesting. I'm getting comments from emails and texts that yes, this one was really engaging and very, very interesting. So we look forward to some other time hosting you again for same or something else. I also wish to thank our directors, Mr. Paul Ichora, Mr. Leonard Itau, and Ms. Rose Warohio for creating time to attend. Thank you very much, and we feel good and supported that you had to create time to attend. I want to wish well and thank the MDs who participated and attended this session, all the commissioners from KRA and other organizations, all participants who are here within and those far away, like the Zimbabwe, Zambia, and the rest of the other countries. Thank you very much for such a support. We will for sure be inviting you for our other sessions that will come in the near future. I want also to wish to thank the KESRA fraternity for the support and for attending and for also creating time. And without much ado, I will end there, and I will say good evening and see you in the next economic dialogue that we shall hold soon. Bye-bye. Back to you, sir.
So thank you very much, Willie. Stay well. I don't know whether you are in Addis Ababa or in back home in Zimbabwe.
I am well. That's a very difficult question to answer. I am well and I am well and surviving. and ready to save Africa from wherever, whether Addis Ababa, Harare, Accra, Nairobi.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so as you transit, as a AfCFTA transits to Accra, we wish you well, and we are really grateful. Please accept our appreciation, and when we invite you, realize I'm using when, not if. When we invite you back, please come back and talk to us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
My directors and my colleagues, both here and in other revenue authorities, and our guests, thank you very much. And as we say in Kenya, kwaheri. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.